Hi everyone, I'm Allyson Pettley. I am the Bureau Manager for the contractors. So I've been with Doppel for about 15 and a half years. I had retail management life ahead of that. I started working with the contractors when I first came to Doppel in 2008. Have had several different areas of responsibility. I worked as an investigator for a couple years. Have worked with some other professions, but have now been in this position for almost 3 years. So I just have to say, this is my favorite part of my job, is to be able to come out and connect with people, people that are either looking to get into an industry or people who are already in it. So as you can tell, you know, those of us up here that have the gray hair, we've been around for a while. We've got some experience under our belts, and some of it is related to the trades, and some of it is not. So like I said, I have a retail background, management background, but I have learned the construction trades as best as I can without being in any of those industries. So the first thing I want to say is I respect all of you, the dedication that you have for your jobs, the service that you provide to your customers, and the safety that you provide to the public for the citizens of Utah. So Steve is the Bureau Manager over the plumbing and electrical trades, as well as several other design trades, etc. So I'll just let Steve just give a quick rundown of his.
So, okay, I've been with the division since 2011. And when I started, I did not have gray hair.
Me too.
I do now. And for a majority of that, I've been involved in the construction trades, and then about 2013, I started working specifically with plumbers and electricians and engineers, architects, the design trades. And then a few years ago, I actually started working with the building codes, the UBCC, and had the opportunity to know a lot of, or get to know a lot of the people in the plumbing industry, and those involved with the board, specifically with us today, Mr. Rob Allen, who did such a great job for 8 years on the plumbing licensing board that I asked him to be on UBCC's plumbing mechanical advisory board. So we haven't met yet or in a while, but when we do, he's always there and very helpful. And I really do enjoy the trades. Working with the plumbers, great people. So with that, Bobby's next.
My name is Bob Main. I'm retired law enforcement. I started off in law enforcement in the military police in the 70s. And I spent 24 years with Tula, retired as a lieutenant, then went to the county attorney's office and spent a stint doing federal gun crimes as a special deputy United States Marshal. I retired and drove school bus for a year, and I got scared of that, and so I came back to work for the state, and I've been there for about 10 years. Used to work on the medical side, doing investigations regarding the healthcare professions, and then I was promoted, and now I work, for the last 7 years, I worked over on the... Does this work?
Is there a button on there?
And I've worked for the last 7 years as the supervisor over the construction trades investigators. But I have 22 other professions, and the construction trades are everything from electrical, plumbing, to every sub-classification. We do the engineers, land surveyors, architects. It's a whole bunch, and we have 11 investigators through the entire state.
Okay, so what I think we'll do is I really would like to stress the importance of staying up to date with what's happening in your industry, as well as anything else that may be of interest to you by following the legislature. We just had our session closed, 2024 session, that did have a little bit of impact for the construction trades. Sometimes I'll follow bills that are being presented as it relates to my work, but sometimes there will be bills that are coming up that just really pique my interest personally. So I always follow at least 15 or 20 bills. So as you're taking notes, and thank you for doing that, the legislature homepage is le.utah.gov. That's where you can look at bills that are filed. You can look and see what the status is, who the sponsors are. You can listen to the committee meetings. Sometimes they get pretty heated and colorful. But people are passionate about what's happening in our state, and we should be paying attention to what our lawmakers are doing. So I appreciate those who are interested in changing things. We look at things, status quo, and that'll never fly. It's this saying nothing will change if nothing changes. So as things evolve, we have to make changes, and we have to do some evolution for the greater good. So take a look at that website, look at the things that will impact us. But most of all, that's where you're going to find the current codes, the administrative code, and also anything that's related to your profession. So that being said, this is our homepage. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. I appreciate that. Let me see if I can find my mouse here. So this is the Department of Commerce homepage. We're going to go to the divisions right here. I've got a glare on here. So here's the Doppel page. And this is where you can find all of the information that you need. If you are a plumbing contractor, a plumber, if you've got relatives that are cosmetologists, something like this is where you'll find everything. So today, we're going to look at contracting. Dave specifically asked me to spend time today talking about scopes of practice and the different classifications for contractors. So I appreciate that. So this is the contracting homepage. This is where you'll find any kind of updated information. But right over here is where you'll find the helpful tabs, okay? So here's exam information, how to renew your license. Thank you all for doing that through this last renewal cycle, which was a challenge for all of us, and I appreciate your pain. But right here is where you'll find the laws and rules. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And I brought some cards if you guys want to have those. I'm happy to provide my contact information. If you guys have any questions, you can always email or call me. Steve's available. Bobby's always available for questions as well. So this is where you'll find a lot of information regarding the laws that govern your license. So this main one right here, this is the Doppel Licensing Act, so Title 58.1. This is the act that is over all of the professions that Doppel oversees. So I think we're up to about 60 plus. And then the administrative rule that accompanies that is right below it. Dropping down two more is the Utah Construction Trades Licensing Act. So for those of you that are online, if you happen to be in front of your computers, you can for sure follow along. So here is, so this will take you directly to this legislative homepage, okay? And so here we are at Title 58, Chapter 55. I always just click either here or here to be able to view. This is hard to do behind me. So this is the Construction Trades Licensing Act. So this will give you all definitions. It will give you a lot of information regarding the work that you do. It will always start with the definitions. And please bear in mind that with the change of any laws that take place every single year that will affect this act, this will change. So don't, print this and think that this is a living or a lifelong document, okay? So it goes down alphabetical, gives all of these definitions. And so all of these subsections here you'll see will give you the definitions. So, and please stop me if you want to take a look at something a little bit longer, but I'm just going to kind of scroll through here and show you what we look at. This is where we live every single day, all day long. So here starts general building contractor. So this means that a person who has the experience and knowledge to engage in that work will fall under that provision. You'll see here, there will be tens of times that it will refer to the division may by rule define something else. So what this does is the legislature has given DOPL the authority in some instances to promulgate rules that will help define either scopes of practice, education requirements, exam requirements, things like that. And that's going to be in the rule that we'll talk about in just a second. So this is where you'll see these definitions. This one specifically, so the general engineering contractor, you will see an update that will come out when this updates on May 1st, because they have also included one other subsection down at the very bottom that includes work to be done, electrical utility conduit, right?
Yep.
So that's included as well for this E100. So here's your world, here the general plumbing contractor. And then down here under subsection 29B, this was where we get that rulemaking authority to promulgate the rules that help define that scope of practice, okay? And bear in mind that the electrical and plumbing trades also both have their own set of rules. Okay? So plumbing trade means the performance of any mechanical work pertaining to the installation, alteration, change, repair, removal, maintenance, or use in buildings or within 3 feet beyond the outside walls of buildings or pipes, fixtures, and fittings for these purposes. So this is where you live. Here's talks about apprentice ratios, residential plumbing. What is a residential project? Specialty contractors. So specialty contractors, these are all of those contractors that are not a general. So roofing, asphalt, concrete, all of those different specialty contractors fall under this one category. The commission, and Mr. Allen has served on the commission. So this actually is also changing a little bit, starting May 1st. Is that when it goes into effect, May 1st? July 1st?
Well, yeah, it goes into effect, but it'll be applicable in October.
So there have been some changes to the structure of some of our boards and commission. And so there were some combinations of professions that were combined. There were some professions that were combined with others for their board purposes. The professions and the practice acts still stay separate, but the board combinations are changing a little bit. So with respect to the Construction Services Commission, the only thing really that changed is that the electrical and plumbing representatives do not have to be the board chairs anymore. So that was really the only other thing that I saw in there. It went through a couple of iterations, but that's where it finally landed. So what that means is, so the plumbing and electrical boards, they do annual elections for their board chair. And so anytime that the board chair changed from one person to another, that appointment to the commission would be made automatically. So sometimes we had that representative from those two trades be different from year to year. This talks about the Electrician Education Enforcement Fund and the Plumber Education Fund. These funds are primarily, they're funded by, do you have citation fines that go in?
No.
Is it just part of the applications?
Part of the renewal and application.
So these funds are used to provide, there's a lot of things that they use it for, community outreach programs. We've done some advertising, we've done some videos, we've done, what else have they used those funds for? Home show.
Home show.
The home show, we just did the home show. This talks about the boards and the commission. Okay, so here's where the licensing is required. So this is the different licensing classifications that we have. So this talks all about the electrical and plumbing, elevator, all of the different levels of those licenses. And then also the specialty classification. This goes into the qualifications for licensure. We didn't have any changes in qualifications this session. So, and a lot of times for all of the professions that DOPL oversees, this will be defined by rule. It will say, the statute will say an exam as defined by rule or education as defined by rule. So then that's where things can change, sometimes drastically, sometimes minutely. One of the things that has come up recently is a change in the practical exams for some professions. So, and really the Governor Cox's mandate, his very first executive order when he became governor, was for DOPL, actually for anyone who issues licenses, to take a look at all of the regulations that govern the licenses and see what we can do to help reduce the barriers. So that was his first order of business. That was on top of anything else, budget or anything. That was his first order of business. And he said, I don't care what it takes. I want you guys to figure this out and let's get people to work. And so we did. We, you know, from the top down, we went to work and we did surveys. We contacted associations and board members and stakeholders, and we asked the questions: what is it that we're requiring that is outdated, redundant, unnecessary? And so there were a lot of changes that came out of that. One of the things the biggest thing that I think came out of it was the Office of Professional Licensure Review. So this is an office that was created that they review sunrise and sunset dates for all of the professions, but they also, this group of people have the task of digging into these professions and looking at what the qualifications are, what are the scopes of practice, what are the things that we're requiring that are unnecessary. And then they are taking, we have meeting after meeting. Last year they did the behavioral health. We have a mental health crisis in our country, and we needed to figure out a way to get people to work. So they worked closely with the stakeholders to see if they could come up with some solutions, and there were some good measures that were taken. There were some that were controversial. You know, I'm not going to lie. It was, you know, there were a lot of people that were had a lot of questions about the decisions that were made. For us, these will all be statutory changes that may have rules that will be promulgated later. I haven't seen contractors on a list yet, so keep that in mind. This year they're doing massage therapy, cosmetology, building inspectors, and factory-built housing. So with the, as it relates to the construction trades, the building inspectors and the factory-built housing is related to what can we do to get people to work to get affordable housing. So that's where, so there's always that kind of underlying current, what can we do to help out the citizens of Utah? Those other two professions that I mentioned are what really would be considered one of those professions that you could get into without having higher education. You can get in, you know, with a high school diploma or less. So they're looking at removing some of those barriers to get some of those people to work. Do you guys have any questions yet? Anything? Okay.
It was House Bill 534 that talked about combining the boards, in case they're interested.
Thank you. Okay, so this talks about the qualifications in a general term for licensing. Because this is the construction trades and contractors specifically, this talks about the background checks that we do. So we do a criminal background check. We do have a matrix that we use to help us make decisions about licensing, and all of the professions that DOPL oversees, all of the boards have reviewed those matrices, and we come to a decision about how to license people if they have a criminal background. Specifically, having a criminal background is not, you're not blacklisted from becoming licensed. You know, there are a lot of things that we take into consideration, specifically, you know, what was the conviction? When did it take place? What have you done since then? You know, do you still have to serve probation? Things like that. So there are times when we do flat out deny a license, depending on what the risk to the public is. That's really what our measurement is. We have to look to see what is it that they're doing in their profession, and how does their criminal history substantially relate to the safe practice of the profession, and that's the weight that we have. Sometimes we'll have situations where we'll take it to the respective boards or to the commission. We'll have them do a review. We have people that are on the sex offender registry. You know, when did it happen? Who was the victim? Like, those are the kinds of things that we look at. So I hope that you understand that when we receive an application, it's reviewed by sometimes quite a few people, and we don't make licensing decisions in a haphazard way. You know, they're all very thoughtful. Let's see, continuing education requirements. I know those are your favorites. In terms of license, you guys have a 2-year. This talks about the qualifier. Some of you may own your own company or the qualifier for your own business. So these are the responsibilities for a qualifier. Here are the exemptions from licensure. So this is, there are exemptions that are specifically defined. This is where you'll find the quote unquote handyman exemption. This one has undergone a huge metamorphosis this year. There was a bill that was proposed this year that raised the limit from $3,000 to $35,000, where you didn't have to have a license. So that means no financial responsibility, no criminal history. The only thing that you would have to have is liability insurance. So through a lot of conversation, that now has been reduced to $7,000 from $3,000. It's been raised from $3,000 to $7,000. So if someone is engaging in a construction trade between $0 and $3,000 when this goes into effect, right now it's $1,000, there's no license or registration required. So once it hits right now $1,000 to $3,000, you have to have that registration with us, and you have to have liability insurance. After this goes into effect, the changes go into effect, it will be from $3,000 to $7,000. Was that clear as mud?
There was the change, that one word was taken out.
Oh, so there was also, yes, the incidental plumbing. So it used to say that they could do replacement or repair of fixtures. Now it just is repair. So they can't do replacements anymore. In addition, if you have the registration with us and you're a licensed journeyman, you can do your own work as long as you stay within that. It has to be as part of that job, and it also has to be within that dollar threshold. Financial responsibility for contractors. So we look at, upon receiving an application, we look at judgments, tax liens, child support, things like that to demonstrate financial responsibility. I mean, contractors have access to their clients' money, so we want to make sure that they are above board and that their company is financially stable, that we can trust them to have a license. So I would say that other than job abandonment, the failure to maintain financial responsibility are the two reasons why we take licenses. So,
is there a reason why the state doesn't have let's say like Nevada, a financial responsibility means you can only bid to this high or this high?
We used to. Before I started in 2008, there were bid limits. I don't know what happened when that was taken out. And also some states require a bond and we don't either. So, if you think that that's something that would help protect the public, that's certainly something that you could talk to your representative about for sure. sometimes, and this is my own experience, I've seen where requirements are lessened, and it's easier to go that way than it is to make greater requirements. So, and it's kind of like the swinging pendulum. You know, we want to be really harsh one way, and then it swings too far the other way. And so we're trying to find where is the right balance. So I don't know if, you know, it may be someone, a lawmaker who has a constituent that has had an issue, and they bring that back up again. And a lot of times that's where the conversation starts. But if you all have looked at the news in the last little while, Governor Cox has said, you know, he signed a record number of bills this year, and he said some of these bills that came through could have been a phone call or a meeting, you know, instead of, you know, let's file a bill and take up a lot of time for people. Let's just have conversations with people, and let's see if we can get some of these issues taken care of. Here's a perfect example. One of the bills that was proposed this year was to mandate DOPL to have sample contracts available for homeowners for residential or commercial projects. It's a great idea. I love it. We've never done that before. And I was just like, okay, who can we get to get that done? There was a fiscal note attached to that. And so there was a lot of conversation around the office about, okay, you know, does this have to go out for a bid to see who's going to draw up these contracts? You know, what do we need to have? For those of you in the real estate business, the Rep C was kind of the impetus for this. So this is not a contract that says you have to have this contract, but it's just really gives a homeowner a really good idea of things that should be in your contract. So the governor said, I think this is a great idea, but I'm not going to make it, it doesn't have to be a law. It does, but I'm telling DOPL that I want them to do that. So it's just as good as written down that we are mandated to do that. So we will take that task and get a good attorney to get a good contract together that we can have made available for homeowners. I think it's a great idea. So we'll get input from anybody and everybody who thinks they've got something that they think should add. And not only that, but I think it's really good that we can change it at any time.
I think also with the contract, it's also, thank you, Steve. I think with the contract, it's also important for contractors because they make sure that they have the information they need. The day of the old handshake and you're going to get paid is over. And our job is to protect you folks as much as it is to protect, people out that are being ripped off by unscrupulous contractors or unlicensed contractors, which it's kind of, I thought I saw crimes when I was working in law enforcement. I had my eyes open when I came over to professional licensing. It's horrible. People are getting ripped off for hundreds of thousands of dollars every single day, and I don't know how to stop it.
Could you comment on, or any of you could comment, with the reducing the requirements of contractor licensing, 4 or 5 years ago? Mm-hmm. Have you seen a trend? Has that been a problem?
Oh, without a doubt, it's been a big problem. The workmanship issues that we see, the scope of practice, beyond the scope of practice, the work that people are doing, because you have job abandonment is huge. People start jobs because they think they can do it. So I don't know, most of you know to get a contractor's a B100 license, you go to a 30-hour course and you pass a laws and rules exam and check a box that you have 2 years of exposure to the construction trades. And what's dangerous about that, not only do you have a B100, but you can also basically act as an electrical and plumbing contractor on residential properties. You can hire a journeyman or master to come and work for you as a W-2 employee, and bang. And then if you look at the S410, and I wasn't going to get into that, but I'm going to. If you look at the S410, it says specifically you can do piping for transmission of water and stuff. So you get a good attorney, he's going to come up there. We take action against an S410 because they come in and they repipe a whole house. And then they don't hook it up to the culinary water or do a backflow preventer. And they go, okay, now I'm going to have this B100 come in with their journeyman or master and hook it up to the culinary water. A good attorney will get them off on that. They're going to say it says right here in code. So it's the Wild West out there. I've heard it described as that quite often, and that goes with the electrical too. There was a change on the electrical thing where conduit is something that could only be installed by electricians. That was changed. E100s can now do that on utilities. So That was changed. So, and then as far as the handyman limits, I'll go into that a little bit too. If a journeyman decides to go out and get a handyman exemption, they can do plumbing and electrical up to $7,000. So without being an electrical contractor. So don't be surprised if you see some of your electrical or your journeymen journeying out on the weekends. Their wife signs them up, because we have this, I have it all the time, where we'll issue a guy a citation, an apprentice. His wife signs him up to go and do side jobs on Facebook and everything, and then we come across it. But you're going to see that more often, and it's legal.
I'm sorry.
No.
With the Opler Department office, is this something that whenever construction is looked at, will they look at that type of?
They look at everything. Yeah, they look at everything. They'll talk to the investigators. They'll look at complaints. They look at trends. They talk to the associations. They talk to licensing staff. So they look at all of our applications, and they're not afraid to come back to a topic that needs more visits. So that kind of work is kind of more up Steve's alley. I'm more of the people person, and he's really good at details and finding anomalies and trends and things like that. And I appreciate that about him so much. So he's kind of the perfect person that I would direct questions to. It's like, okay, Opler has a question about this, and Steve would be like, I'm all over that. I'll figure that one out. So I do appreciate that. But so every profession is required to be reviewed every 10 years. So, sometime it'll fall in that 10-year cycle somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming up within the next few years for contractors, just because of the housing.
So, Steve, do you see that there's some solutions there in your mind's eye of tightening that, having a class and thinking that they're professional and they're out there doing things that are not appropriate for a contractor?
As far as an unlicensed person?
Or getting that license so easily now?
Yeah, so what Opler does, it's a division within the Department of Commerce. They're separate from the division, so they operate independently, but essentially what they do is they will perform an audit. And in doing so, they really peel back every layer of the onion. And as Allyson said, there isn't an avenue or alley that they don't go up. So they'll look at everything, and then they ask us, what are some of the things you see that are causing problems, or what are some of the good things? So we have an opportunity to address those. One of them would be, with the deregulation, I don't know that our fines actually reflect what the punishment or the punitive measure should be, because we've had the same fine amount for as long as I can remember, and I think it goes past 20, 25 years. So that's one of the things they'll look at too, fine amounts. Are they proportionate to what's going on?
I think another issue that we're seeing is the qualifiers. Could you just kind of review what is required of a qualifier? Because we've got people that are qualifying for multiple licenses, but really, they just want the license done.
Yeah, so Dave's question, I don't think he's getting picked up on the microphone. So his question is, can we talk a little bit about qualifiers and what the responsibilities are and what the qualifications are? So the qualifier, so every contractor's license has to have at least one. So depending on what classification, what kind of work it is that you're doing, it's either going to be a general classification or it will be one of the specialties. So if there's specialties, they can have up to 3 classifications. It can be the same qualifier, or it can be multiple qualifiers. So that person right now, the qualification is that, so for the generals, they have to do a 30-hour course. It's actually a 25-hour course, and then they can take the law and rule exam. There's an additional 5-hour course that they can take that is a law and rule prep course. So that's not really required, but and that only comes that they can demonstrate the competency to pass that exam. So And then to have 2 years of experience for the generals, and then they apply for the license. So a qualifier can be on up to 3 licenses. Anytime we get an application for someone to be a qualifier on more than 3 licenses, they actually have to meet with the commission and explain to the commission how they're going to spend their time. Typically, they have their own company that they're running their own jobs. Sometimes they are in a position that they're barely there, where they have a crew that does their work. They've got a superintendent, they've got foreman, whatever the situation setup is. They've got their office manager, they have payroll, so they're there as the qualifier. But then they also have time that they can go help out the brother-in-law, or they can take on another side business or things like that. So it's completely reasonable for someone to have up to 3. It's not the norm for people to have up to 3. We do see quite a few that have 2, so they'll have their own business and then be a qualifier for someone else. Sometimes they're acting as a qualifier while one of the employees or one of the owners even is gaining that 2 years of experience, so then they can take the law and rule exam and then take the pre-licensure course and become their own qualifier. So we see that, but does that answer your question?
Can I interject on that? They also have to work at least 12 hours a week, have a substantial amount of interaction with the company, the day-to-day operation, hirings, firings, and they have to be paid a substantial amount. They can't be paid $1 an hour. So what you see is, and what we run into quite often, is if sometimes people are being the qualifier for multiple companies, they're just selling their ability to hold that license. And that's what we need to make sure that we address and look into, and take away that right for them to be a qualifier if they're not standing up and doing what they're required to do.
That'd be hard to find those.
Yes, it is.
So they have to be either a 20% owner or a W-2 employee in a management position. So there is that threshold as well. And when they fill out the application to become the qualifier, they have to attest to that. And so if we find out later that they are lending their name out to be the qualifier on a license, we can use that misrepresentation on an application as part of the disciplinary action process.
Would it be possible to, I could probably give you 15 or 20 right now that would just drive you crazy.
Give them to me. I'll drive them crazy.
But most of them are in southern Utah, but again, that's the ones I know. I'm sure there's some up here. But is it possible to have you guys send out to the plumbing, air conditioning budget, or just plumbing or electrical, I guess you guys are more involved with, a letter that says, please provide your W-2? Because most of these guys I'm aware of are not, they're just renting a license.
So that's a good question. So for those of you online that didn't hear that, is it possible for Doppel to send out a letter? It really would be an audit letter saying, show us how you're being paid by your company. We do have an audit team that does periodic audits, and they are typically complaint based, and so either it will be. I will say we do get competitors that will say, I know a guy who, and we love that. It's completely fine if we get those kinds of complaints. Or I lost a bid to someone who, fill in the blank here. That's Bobby's bread and butter. That's his team's bread and butter. This is job security for them. So the more complaints that we get and the more noise that's being made on the same subject, that's when change happens. And so I had a question yesterday. Someone said, how do you feel about whistleblowers? If you want to tell on your employer, go for it. I don't think that I'm going to use the word ethical. The construction trades don't have a code of ethics, but it is your personal ethics. It's your that's what you should do as a human. Don't let people get away with stuff that they shouldn't be doing.
Allyson, I'll give you an exception to that. we have right there, that anybody who signs up with UPHCA has to sign.
So thank you. So there are associations that do have their own code of ethics, and there are some professions that have adopted a code of ethics, especially for national organizations and things like that. So we appreciate that. And if you're signing up to be a member of this association, you're agreeing to abide by that code of ethics. And we have angry ex-spouses who will file complaints. We get it from everywhere, but we really Bob's team, they get in their cars and they hit the job sites. And it's, the worst, best problem to have is like, I just had an investigator on the same job site last week. It's like, yeah, we're doing our job, that's great. So we want to know about unlicensed practice. We want to know about, people that are, breaking any of the unlawful or unprofessional conduct requirements that are in place for the licensure. There's always the unlicensed people.
There's a couple other, if I could. Sorry, I had to leave. That was the director. So a couple of the things that we're seeing now that we've really been dealing with, we'll have companies that will have a bunch of employees. They'll be sending out techs to do electrical and plumbing work. I'm not going to name any company names. And oftentimes they pay their employees a commission if they have a sales or they upsell, and we've been running into that recently. Matter of fact, I have a case right now, without getting into any names or anything, individual that has been dealt with before. We're looking at criminal charges if we can get an a county attorney to file them. They go up, they find a handicapped or a disabled person, somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia like this one has, and actually went in and redid the whole wiring, or billed them to redo the whole wiring in the house, a bunch of plumbing and stuff, HVAC stuff. They charged them $1,800 per outlet. They did 14 outlets and charged them. Actually filled out the checks and had the lady who didn't even know who they were sign it. And so we see that quite often. And that was one of the questions that we discussed with Rob, who's just been a wealth of information to us as we've been going through this. Is it typical that apprentices are allowed to go out to job sites and bid jobs, especially on residential, where they don't have to have direct supervision? And if that's the case, they have to put down the license number of the contractor on those bids, and then the license holder is going to be the one that's arbitrarily responsible for all the action that we're going to be taking against not only the apprentice, but the license holder too.
We're also finding, Bobby, that some companies are not even licensed what they would consider their apprentices.
Exactly. They're sending out techs and they're crossing over and doing plumbing and electrical work, and we need to find those guys too.
Young person says, hey, I want to become an apprentice. I want to go to school and the hours haven't been counted because the employer never got him to be indentured. And so there's a lot of that going on with some companies. And so how do you find those, because you can't go in and look at their papers and see what the ratios and who's licensed and so forth. Is that
Because
correct?
they did away with the shop limits. What I've instructed my guys to do, if they see service vehicles out at residences, to stop by the residence, knock on the door. Hello, Mr. Homeowner, my name is so-and-so from the state of Utah. I see that you're having work done out here. And I want to make sure that it's being done correctly. It's being done by a licensed person, not somebody who just holds, that's a hired tech. And that way they know that we're out there watching them. And so that's what I've instructed my guys to do. Other than that, the only other way we have it is people report it to us. And when they do, we're on it.
Before we run out of time, because one of the main reasons for this was contractor classification. Because those specialty contractors, it becomes really.
Yeah, let's go into that. So I'm going to.
If I can maybe interject, the way I find it the easiest, and I'm not a computer guy, I go to R156-55A-301, and that has a list and the scope of practice of all of the construction trades that we have. Then it refers you back to 58-55-501 or 102, and it shows you the exact work they can do.
the scope of practice table. When we do the rule update, this table is going to go away and it'll be easier to follow. We thought it would be easier to make a table, and then we decided that it wasn't so user-friendly. So this will tell you all of the classifications. So general engineering, general building, this will tell you exactly what is included with that scope of practice. The modular unit installation contractor, we're seeing more of those ADUs, tiny homes, things like that. And then the residential small commercial, and then the R101, which is non-structural remodeling and repair, factory built housing. E200, the residential electrical contractor, solar. Solar is, we've seen a big uptick in complaints about solar, and this is mostly the financial responsibility job abandonment situations, and they're big money. These companies, they're taking a lot of money from homeowners, and consumer protection. So one of our sister agencies housed within the Department of Commerce, we have built, between Bobby and the investigators in consumer protection, our two agencies have built a partnership and a relationship where we're seeing the same complaints from consumer protection as we are from DAPA licensees. So the investigators are working closely together to make sure that we get good resolutions where we can. Consumer protection happens to have higher fine authorities, and sometimes they're able to get money back. We don't have restitution authority. We don't have arrest authority. We don't have, we can't detain people, things like that. So as much as we want to, huh?
Yeah, and I know Dave has been really instrumental in trying to fulfill my wish, and I wanted for Christmas, I started like 6 years ago, and Rob too, I want a full-time prosecuting attorney assigned to our unit that will handle our cases criminally. And
Why can't we have it? Okay, so do like we did in Las Vegas, in Nevada, we raised all license fees $100.
And you know
And
what else
that's
you can
government.
do, what I like about Nevada is they'll often, in the medical side, they would charge the respondent for the investigation. And I see this charge doctors $60,000 for the investigation. The doctor had to pay that fine.
And attorney's fees.
And attorney's fees.
Well, if they're.
I have been begging, matter of fact, my director told me about 2 weeks ago, Bob, when you die, I'm gonna come and pay my respects, and you're gonna pop up out of your coffin, and you're gonna go, I need an attorney. And it is so critical, and Dave has had, your lobbyist, Dave has had your lobbyist, try to get this. We did a big research a few years ago, and Dave Spatafor sat down and told me that we could keep 2 full-time attorneys and 2 full-time paralegals busy completely. We issue between 12 and 1,500 citations a year. Each one of those citations is a Class A misdemeanor. In addition, we went from 50 notices of agency actions to over 200, and Allyson processes every single one of those. And that's just the cases, and that doesn't include all the fraud and the theft and everything else that we're seeing, that people are not being made whole because we don't have there are prosecuting attorneys that won't even listen to our investigators unless we report it to the sheriff's office first, and then it has to go through them, which is ludicrous. It is, yes, and an $800 fine. I have people all the time. I just made $50,000 on that job, and you're going to issue me an $800 citation that if I don't pay it, it's going to go to state collections and nothing's going to happen with it?
$800 25 years ago cost a lot.
Yeah.
It's nothing
And
new.
it's nothing because those guys, especially if they're unlicensed, they're not going to pay it. It's going to go to state collections. They're never going to make any money. But if we had a prosecutor, once those citations become final, they turn into Class A misdemeanors. You get a Class A misdemeanor, you lose your driving privilege, you use your driver's license, you a year in the county jail and a $2,500 fine on top of that for every single violation. So
to put that in perspective, a DUI is a Class B misdemeanor. So unlicensed practice is a higher level crime than a DUI or prostitution.
We can't
So.
get county attorneys, city prosecutors to do anything. Has that been a problem with that?
yes, we had a 3-hour meeting with them, and he's actually been charged. He's on probation, and there's more investigation going on to maybe do something. But this is happening statewide, and not just all over the state. There are people that are going out there. They are hiring bringing in people they're paying under the table, which is a violation. I mean, that's just another thing of aiding unlicensed practice or hiring unlicensed individuals, and it just keeps on going. And every time they do that, they take money out of your pockets and stuff. I mean, you're getting underbid on jobs.
If we get the fines to a point that they're, give a little hurt.
Well, if the fines come back to us, that would be, but they go to the general fund. I would love to have a full-time prosecutor that I don't have to have my guys go. And oftentimes we'll go and screen a case with a prosecutor and say, yeah, we'll look at it. We'll look at it. And then they it sits on their desk for 2 years and they don't do nothing with it. So once it's out of our hands, we don't have any oversight. Where if we had our own prosecutor, we would have oversight because that person would be working right with us, and he would be dealing with Title 58, which is what we deal with, and law enforcement deals with Title 76. So we're going to try and educate law enforcement. I actually just got off the phone yesterday with the chief or the assistant chief at one of our agencies, and he's going to have us come out and do some training. So when there are crimes, they can address those.
I think one of the things we need to do with this group here, and especially a bunch of that are online with this, is define, we have a house, we have house to street, and we have meter or curb. Which licenses are required for each one of those sections?
So we don't.
Under water and sewer only.
So we don't have that definition. Typically those, in fact, that's why this conduit conversation came up this year, because we were having the E100s laying conduit in the streets, where conduit is specifically called out in the electrical code. So one of the representatives, Tom Peterson, as part of his bill, included that language in this year's session. So I think that, and there's fixed works is also one of the phrases that's used. We've never had a definition for that either. So I can remember when I first started in 2008, it was, from the sidewalk to the house, and including the house that was residential. Anything beyond that was like a general engineering or one of those other specialty classifications, but we don't have that definition. But
we have a 3-foot rule.
Who can work from the meter or the curb to the house? Does it have to be a journeyman plumber or apprentice?
No.
Inside the home, 3 foot inside has to be journeyman apprentice. How about from the curb to the street, to the connection to the street?
E100 or an S.
Does not require plumber
Or a plumber can do it.
Plumber
okay, plumber can do the whole thing.
Whole thing.
Okay. What licenses are required from curb to the house for plumbing only?
That's 410.
Is that the only one?
E100 can do what they've been doing. They run laterals. That was actually brought up. I actually brought that up because E100s will run laterals from the street and they'll go inside into the homes. This was brought up before the plumbing board too, right? And they didn't see a problem with that because they didn't want to have a knuckle 3 feet out where you guys have to go out and dig, have an exposed hole or everything. So, but that wasn't changed in statute. So technically, 3 feet from the house inside has to be done by plumber.
Can a 410 from a water service, from the meter, can he loop into the house?
He can't go into the house.
But he can push it in the
He can
hole.
push it in through the hole. But it does say that in the S410, I'm going to read this to you real quick if we have a minute.
Pull it up. It's on there.
oops, passed it.
So fabrication, construction, installation of pipes, conduit, or cables for the conveyance and transmission from one station to another of products such as water, steam, gases, except for natural gas that requires an RMGA certificate holder, chemicals, slurries, and other substances, data, or communications, geothermal. I'll let you read the rest of it. Is it up there?
Yeah.
So a plumber doesn't have to have the RMGA because we have
Right,
our
correct.
plumbing license. Okay, so this refers to, I shouldn't say HVAC guys, but they have to have that to run gas.
Okay, and they can run heat insulation, other devices and apparatus and equipment related thereto in a system not connected to the culinary water system or connected to the culinary water system, but separated from the culinary water system by a backflow prevention device. And that's where you get into trouble, because there's a certification to get the backflow that allows S330s, landscape contractors to get it, and allows these guys to get it too.
Please don't forget the mic.
I hope you guys heard that.
What's involved in replacing your qualifier?
It's actually super simple. So we actually have a qualifier, kind of a specialist, licensing specialist. That's really what she does. So, the question is, what's the process of replacing a qualifier? So let's just say someone retires, or they.
I'm a qualifier, I'm trying to retire.
You're trying to, okay.
When you mentioned qualifier, I got thinking, geez, what have I got to do now?
So what do you need to do? So.
Retired as well?
So we have a form. We have a form that's a qualifier disassociation form, and it basically says I'm no longer going to be the qualifier. And really, depending on how your company is structured, especially through the division of corporations, is the ownership going to stay the same? You're still going to be involved with the company. All of that's going to change. Okay, so if it's going to be a new entity, it will be a new license. Okay, so it will be a new EIN number, a new registration with corporations, and all that kind of stuff.
Not if they just sell their shares in it.
Yeah, we're selling our shares.
Okay, yeah, so if all of that's going to still stay the same, keeping the same name and all those kinds of things, then you're good. So there's a form to take yourself off, and then we need to have, so you actually have 60 days to replace the qualifier. So let's just say, let me think of something colorful. So the qualifier gets thrown in jail and is not going to get out for a long time. So we want to get him off our license. No, I'm just kidding. So you
Tried to keep him clean.
so you can take yourself off, and then there's an application to replace the qualifier, and they have to take the pre-licensure course, and they have to, depending on what the classification is, they may or may not have an exam. So for this, they would have to be a master plumber already, okay? And then we'll look at whoever it is, we'll look at the financial responsibility piece and the criminal history as well, so. And it's just an application.
He will have to get a contractor's license, so go through the 25-hour course, unless he's already a contractor.
Yeah, right, that's correct.
What can be done to help us? I think every one of us in this room has had this problem but don't know it. We've got it a couple of times. People going in and using our licenses, and we have no clue until something happens.
Okay, so the question,
You're involved with that.
so the question is, what do we do if someone is using our license numbers, like to get building
What do
permits
you
and
guys
things like that?
do? I mean, I know that.
So if someone is using your license number to get a building permit or something like that, to buy supplies, all those kinds of things, that's fraud. So we can handle that from our end if they are a licensee. If they're unlicensed and they found your number, they're using your number, we probably won't know about it unless you find out about it and you complain about it.
What I'm wondering is,
So here's what you can do. What you can do is you contact the entity that issued the permit, and well, if you do, I mean, when you find out, I mean, if we don't know about it, there's nothing we can do about it. So I mean, you can check the state construction registry to see what jobs, if jobs are listed or whatever. If you have any, suspicions that the permit's being drawn in a city, you can check that to see if a permit's been drawn under your name. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that we can do. Yes, they do. They do. But some of them verify a license by they manufacture a fake card, a fake license, and present it, or they've been allowed to borrow a license, or they just write it in. They don't identify them or anything. But if you do find out that somebody's using your license, contact the entity, tell them that it's a fraud. You report it to us. We'll go after the people for unlicensed practice or whatever they're doing, and we'll be happy to work with law enforcement But you'll need to file a complaint with law enforcement for identity theft, fraud, and don't report it to a patrolman because they'll say, oh, this is probably just a civil problem. Go in and talk to an administrator, a detective or something, and then you might have to push it through. But our investigators, I've testified in a homicide trial while I was with Doppel, so we will testify for whoever. When I was talking to the assistant chief the other day, I said, my guys will do the reports, we'll testify, we'll do everything you want. All you got to do is put them in jail and arrest them, and hopefully that's what we'll do, be able to do. But that's a big problem right now because we see that quite often too. It's not an anomaly. It's something that's happened quite often that somebody will call us up and say, hey, this guy's using my license, or my license was used on this job and I had no idea about it. But we also talked about permitting, and I don't know if that went through. Did it go through? So we have citation authority if people don't get permits. But what I'm talking about is, they were trying to do reductions on permits, saying it was too hard to put the name of a licensee on a permit because it changes 6-8 months out depending on how long the project takes. I have a friend that said, no, that's BS. It takes a phone call to change the name on a permit, but that's something that'll have to be done through your association or through the legislation.
Individual who's filing for a building permit, they put down a number that's not theirs, falsifies it. But the city doesn't have to contact Doppel or contact that company to make sure that that is legitimate. Is that correct?
They have an obligation to make sure that the person is licensed, and all they will most likely do is pull up that license number and go, okay, they have an active license, and
Lawrence Snow is a qualifier for that.
Correct.
And okay, fine.
Yeah.
But Lawrence doesn't know that's happened.
right. And they're not going to most likely contact every contractor and to say, hey, just want to verify this is accurate.
The only way we actually know it happens is when we get a decline notice, and we thought, this isn't one of our jobs. But how many times they get an approval and we don't know about it? Because is this something that Doppel can help us with the state, with the cities, or is this something that has to climb the ladder above that?
I think it probably has to go to the legislature, but I think you might try to do something like every, put in some type of a law or rule that a city has to be more diligent on checking a license.
The
Yeah.
licensee, hey, here's a permit goes in your name.
Yeah.
That's what used to happen in Las Vegas.
That's a simple fix. I think that's a simple fix, but you'll have to, we're in a world of deregulation right now, so.
Yeah, we started doing some research. We probably had 30 or 40 permits pulled in our name that we didn't know about this year. And that's in West Jordan and South Jordan.
Do you ever see that happen with suppliers as well, where somebody's used your license number to secure supplies from somebody? No?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
That's the key. We don't know about it.
so
if you have an issue like that, please report it to us. Just go to our website. It's a simple process. I'll have an investigator jump right on it and look into it and see if we can identify through the homeowner or other contractors out on the job site who did the plumbing work and see if we can go after them. Sometimes it's very simple to file a complaint. You just go to our main website, click on file a complaint, put the information down, and you'll have an investigator contact you, and we'll look into it. We'll be happy to.
Doing this is to have this guy over here, we call him and he
Yeah,
gives.
they know me.
That's
The reason is that way it's anonymity to us, to him, and to you.
I have no problem with that. Just on the website, just put down the exact information because we have to have the specifics. And I don't have a problem with that either. We get anonymous complaints all the time.
Here's the information, send it in.
This is what the work was done here. This is the permit number. We didn't do that work. This is the time period. Any other information that you can gather from any other contractors on the job site, maybe they'll say, oh, well, such and such salt.
Employee come back at me, coming after me because he knows who I am and said, you turned me in.
So one of the things that we run into sometimes when we have anonymous complaints is there's already been a conversation that's taken place, and so the recipient of the complaint already knows who it was that is complaining about him. So it kind of does negate the anonymity that way, or that, we've seen situations where it's like, I'm going to call Doppel on you. Guess what? We just have a complaint on you. I'm going after that. So anyway,
And
but
that is the problem. That is the fear that's out there, is because now you get rid crook that's already a crook and a criminal that's already a criminal.
So
The
we
thing about it is too, if you report it to us, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, we are going to handle it administratively, not criminally. You're going to have to push the criminal charges through your local law enforcement because we don't have jurisdiction over that.
When they come after us,
You're right. I understand. I had a guy threaten to come to my house.
yeah.
I,
That's
he didn't though.
That's the challenge
I
that
went
we
to
have.
his.
I think working through Dave is a great idea.
Yeah.
And since we've allocated the plumbers for preferential treatment, that's really the best way to go.
We appreciate you taking it all.
If you are being threatened by anybody or you have any things, contact us too. Yeah, but if it does happen in the future, we know this world, what's going on. So if it does happen in the future, let us know. We'll be happy to try and work. I've got out of my 11 investigators, 10 are retired law enforcement from around the valley, and they have contacts, and we will use those to go after some of these bad guys. So I have 11 investigators total. I have 2 in St. George. I have 22 different professions, a couple 100,000 licensees.
So you can see the ratio there.
well, and not only is it the licensees, but it's the unlicensed people. So
The bad guys that don't have the license, and it's like every other profession. 99% of the professions do what they're supposed to be doing. You have that 1% that are licensed that don't, and then you have all those people that aren't licensed that make all of us look bad. So. And those are the guys that we need to go after and target, and I don't care if target's improper or, target them. We target. Felons, and that's the way it should be.
any more questions about scope of practice that you guys want to cover? Anything else related to this? This also goes into, like, they combined a bunch of classifications several years ago. There's some more exemptions, some things that don't need to have a license. Examination, experience requirements. That this talks about the pre-licensure course that's required, continuing education, what those requirements are. Here's your qualifier information, so you can look here for that information. And then on our website, that's where all the forms are, under the applications tab.
And one more thing, if you go to 58, 55, 305, and you really want to be confused, those are the exemptions from licensure. You can read through those and see if you can figure those out too.
I know we had an hour, but I'm willing to stay as long as you guys want us to stay. If there's something more you want us to go in depth with, there's a lot of conversation going on in the back. Do you guys have questions?
No, I'm translating.
Okay.
I want to make sure, because there's a lot of different terms that you're not super familiar with.
Okay, so is Spanish first language? Okay, so we have 2 licensing specialists that are Spanish fluent. So if there are questions that need to be answered directly, we can talk to either Kim or Lady, Leidy.
Are there any questions online for the
I've
audience?
been checking in.
No?
So far there hasn't been.
Okay.
Vivo hace 25 años aquí en Utah,
I'm living here for 25 years in Utah.
una ciudad maravillosa. He estudiado mucho este trabajo que hago
Studied this
en
for very much,
HVAC.
the HVAC.
Okay.
Escuchándolo a ustedes, me doy cuenta de que hay un problema
Hearing you, I feel like there's a problem
con las facilidades para acceder
with being able to making it too easy.
a irse contra una persona que está cometiendo un crimen. Para ir en contra de la ley que está cometiendo.
So to become his own contractor, is that the question?
No.
Oh,
I'm trying to say that I understand that there are problems for going in against the people committing a crime.
oh,
That's
uh-huh.
what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
And put attention because I study a little different thing. In my country, I had the opportunity to work in criminal investigation too. Then right now, from east on the world, yeah, from Gaza and America in general, South America, the people installing or destroying the law. Yeah, trying to put the problem para acceder a ir en contra de una persona que está cometiendo un crimen. Ya. En el mundo, todas las leyes en las diferentes naciones, hay personas tratando de destruir la ley en cada nación. Ha sido en mi país, Chile.
I'm sorry, can you talk a little louder so I can...
So I think,
Maybe so I can get the people off lines, because they're not following it, because they can't hear.
okay.
So let's just go ahead and thank you.
Okay, you're
We
welcome.
appreciate very
Of
much
course,
all your energy
you're welcome.
and effort to come here. And we're going to utilize your services more often. This has been great information.
Dave, please give out our contact information.
I will.
Because we're here for all of you guys. We want to provide education. We want to make sure that we're staying involved in what's happening with trends and things that you're seeing. That's the only way that we can stay informed. None of us are licensed professionals in any of these trades, so we want to make sure that we're listening to you guys. To go through Dave, go through your associations, go through give me a call, send me an email, anything like that. I'm more than happy to listen. And luckily for us, we have partners that can, we can bounce ideas off. We have the commission, we have our boards, we have, a lot of avenues to get things changed if that's the right thing to do. Lobbyists,
We do have one question. Can you explain why the B100 can do residential HVAC work? How do you know they are qualified to work on the HVAC equipment?
I can address that.
So the same qualification, you have to go through more qualification to get your B100 license than you do your HVAC license. To get your B100 license, you have to do the 25-hour plus the 30-hour or 5-hour additional and have 2 years of exposure to the construction trades. To get your HVAC license, you take a 25-hour course. There is no trades exam. There is no experience requirement, and there is no laws and rules exam. I didn't make up the law. I'm just telling you what it says.